Brian Myers. We saw an appearance, sort of, by Brian Myers last night on Impact Wrestling. It was a massive night, wasn't it, for Impact Wrestling last night? So much happened on that show, whether it was the Motor City Machine Guns defeating the North for the Impact Tag Team Championship, whether it was EC3 attacking Moose, whether it was Brian Myers, whether it was Heath Slater. There is so much going on right now in Impact Wrestling, so much momentum and so much excitement really coming out of Slammiversary at the weekend that there's so much to talk about, and I don't really know where to start with this one, but we'll start with Brian Myers. So we didn't fully get an appearance from him in person last night on Impact Wrestling. Instead, we saw a very, very quick vignette with Brian Myers in, and that was about it. What we do know, though, is that I believe it was Monday, we had 2 episodes of Impact taped by Impact Wrestling, and Brian Myers was there at those TV tapings. Now, how do we know this? Well, Tommy Dreamer has released a picture on social media of all of these new Impact Wrestling recruits, the ex-WWE guys, the people returning to the company. So in this picture, you had Brian Myers, you had EC3, you had Gallows and Anson, you had Eric Young, you had Heath Slater. Just, the really exciting time that's going on right now for Impact Wrestling. So you had the quick tease of Brian Myers last night. And what does this mean for Impact Wrestling? What does this mean for Brian Myers? What does this mean for Zack Ryder? Well, I've speculated quite a lot in the videos I've done recently about Impact Wrestling that I thought Brian Myers was going to go to the company. It makes the most sense for me in terms of him going to the company. Why does it make the most sense? Well, I think about the position that he's in, the position he has been in WWE. I think about his history with TNA and Impact Wrestling, and I think it just makes the most sense. Brian Myers has been in Impact Wrestling before. Brian Myers is a former TNA World Tag Team Champion. He was a World Tag Team Champion with Trevor Lee back in the GFW invasion of Impact Wrestling in around 2015. He's got history there, that he's treated well there. He's treated as a credible wrestler there, as opposed to someone that loses every match like he was in WWE. It just makes the most sense. So that wasn't a massive surprise for me to see Brian Myers at Impact Wrestling. I think he'll be a great addition to the roster. Is he going to be in a tag team there? You know what? I don't think so. In the videos I've done about Brian Myers and about Impact Wrestling recently, I said that I thought that Brian Myers would come in, Kurt Hawkins would come in with Zack Ryder. Of course, Zack Ryder was one of the names released by WWE back in April. One of the names on that list, and Black Wednesday, when was it? In April. And one of the names that was waiting for their non-compete clause to expire this past weekend. And when we didn't see Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins at Slammiversary on Saturday, some people, myself included, said, well, it's still a possibility that they could have signed with Impact Wrestling. We're going to have to wait till Tuesday. And subsequently we've seen Brian Myers. Does this mean that Zack Ryder definitely isn't coming to Impact Wrestling? Absolutely not. This still could absolutely be the plans. Whilst we didn't see Zack Ryder there, they might just be saving it for a bit later on. They don't want to debut everyone at the same time. I've spoken about this before, and I don't want to repeat what I'm saying here too much, but why would you have every single person or every single surprise that you've got up your sleeve? Why would you have it at Slammiversary and then the following night at Impact Wrestling? Or the following Tuesday at Impact Wrestling? You wouldn't do that, because it doesn't make any sense creatively with so much going on. And to be honest, they're running a fine line with it now. There are so many debuts, there are so many returns, whether it's Eric Young, whether it's Rich Swann even returning to the ring, whether it's the Good Brothers making their debut with the company, or return if you're Luke Gallows, whether it's Heath Slater jumping the barricade, whether it's whoever signing with the company. Brian Myers, or the Motor City Machine Guns, right? Their return to the company and subsequent win of the Impact Tag Team Championships. With Brian Myers, his return did get people talking last night, but it's almost an afterthought, because so much has happened, because of the Good Brothers, because of the tag team title change, because of all of it. It's almost a little bit of an afterthought. So you see the reason why in some cases, like if Zack Ryder does indeed sign with Impact Wrestling, why it makes sense to hold off a little bit, because you want it to have have the most meaning possible. You want it to have the most impact, pun intended. I always get that impact pun in every video I do here. But you want it to have the most impact possible as to when he makes his debut. So does it mean that Zack Ryder hasn't signed with Impact Wrestling? Absolutely not. They could certainly save that for next week or in a couple of weeks' time. They don't have to rush this sort of thing. But potentially, it could mean that we get a better inclination as to where Zack Ryder is going to be heading in the near future. Of course, AEW Dynamite is once again live tonight on TNT. Cody Rhodes will be doing his weekly TNT Championship Open Challenge, and many people are speculating that Zack Ryder could be the one to answer that. It's certainly possible. It's the same with Mike Bennett. I've spoken quite a lot about is Mike Bennett going to sign with Impact Wrestling? Is Mike Bennett going to go back to Impact Wrestling? Mike Bennett, of course, has great history with the company. He was a former X Division champion. He wasn't there for a super long period of time either, but his run with the company was so meaningful and so impactful that he got a WWE main roster spot because of it. You have to remember that every time anyone nowadays, unless you're AJ Styles, signs a contract with the WWE and they haven't been on the WWE roster before, they go to NXT. They pay their dues. They get used to the WWE style. They get used to it all, the politics, the way WWE produces and writes television, that rigid structure. They have to get used to it, and they have to do that by going to NXT, and they have to do that by going to the WWE Performance Center. No one is really exempt from that. But Mike Bennett was. Mike Bennett was with Impact Wrestling. His contract came up. He had the Billy Corgan incident where he left the company. He was a Billy Corgan guy. But he also spoke to a few people in WWE and said, and they said, look, come here. We'll put you straight to the main roster, which is obviously appealing. And he spoke to some other people inside WWE, some of his friends, and they said, look, come, do it. You might never get the opportunity again. Do I think that he wishes he did that since then? I don't know. During his period with WWE, most importantly, forget about the creatively unsatisfying moments and the bad storylines and just that it didn't work out for Mike Bennett in WWE. I think the most important thing when it comes to him is that he got sober during his time with WWE on the main roster. He didn't go to rehab. He did it on the road, but he quit his addiction to painkillers, and he's a healthier and happier man because of that. So that's important. That's probably the best thing to come out of his WWE run. But again, because he didn't appear last night on Impact Wrestling, does that mean that Mike Bennett isn't going to be coming to Impact Wrestling in the near future? Again, it's the same thing with Zack Ryder. We don't know, but it's not completely off the table at all. Mike Bennett, though, could absolutely answer Cody's open challenge tonight. They have history, ironically, from their time in Impact Wrestling. Pretty much Cody's big feud in Impact Wrestling, certainly at the Bound for Glory that he had, was against Mike Bennett. It was Cody and Brandy Rhodes versus Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis. Mike Bennett, it was husband and wife versus husband and wife. That was the gimmick, wasn't it? That was the storyline that they were going with, and it did pretty well there. So look, they have history. Could Mike Bennett appear tonight for AEW in the TNT Open Challenge? Yeah, it's certainly possible. But I go back to what I've said numerous times now when it comes to these stars that were released by WWE. That being that if you go to AEW, you go into a really packed roster, and you might have a ceiling there. And I think that is the same for even a Zack Ryder. I think that's the same for Mike Bennett. That yes, you'll come in, you'll probably have the fanfare of a TNT Championship Open Challenge match, and you'll get people talking and social media will buzz for a while, but then it's the classic professional wrestling what's next syndrome. Okay, what am I doing after that? That's what the best pro wrestlers, whenever you've heard them in interviews, whenever you had like CM Punk talk about it, it's always, okay, what am I doing after that? That's the most important thing. You need to know what you're doing after that as opposed to what you're doing right now. Because what you're doing right now isn't going to last very long, so it's okay, where do I go from here? And that would be my concern for Zack Ryder and Mike Bennett as they come into AEW. Yeah, their debut's going to be great. They're going to have the TNT match with Cody Rhodes, but then after that, are they just going to appear on Dark? I mean, are they going to appear on Dynamite every week? That Dynamite show, that's valuable real estate. really, isn't it? It's valuable real estate because it's precious time. It's AEW's premiere show, and there are a lot of stars on that show right now, and there aren't many segments on there. So how do you do it? How can you force your way on there? Are you going to be appearing on Dark every week? And that's not a slight to people that are appearing on Dark every week, but you're even seeing quite established names appear on Dark most week at the moment because there's nothing for them at the moment in AEW creatively. I think Scorpio Sky was on there this week, and again, Scorpio Sky's tremendous, great worker. Again, I'm not saying that he has to leave AEW or anything like that, not at all. But it just shows that places are very, very tight in AEW. Whereas if a Mike Bennett does come to an Impact Wrestling, re-signs with Impact Wrestling, returns to the company, you know that he's going to be featured quite heavily on the program. You just look at the other guys that have signed with Impact Wrestling that were released by WWE, they're being featured quite heavily because, not to say that Impact Wrestling, they need the star power, but it's somewhere else to go, and you're going to probably get more chances, more opportunities there than you will do in AEW, at least immediately anyway. And that's the important thing as well, is when I say at least immediately, that's because, at the moment, you're probably, if you're one of these guys that got released by WWE in April, this period of time right now where your non-compete clause is just expired, when people want to know where you're going to go next, where you're going to land next, the chance to reinvent yourself, your next choice of employment, your next promotion you're going to work in. This is probably when the interest is going to be highest in you than it's been for quite a while. People are excited, people are interested in what you're going to do next. If you go somewhere and like an AEW and have the one match and then don't appear on TV for a couple of weeks, that momentum that you've got, that buzz that you've got is going to disappear. Whereas some of the guys that have signed with Impact Wrestling now, Gallows and Anderson, there's so much buzz around them, and they've done it so well because they've done a lot of media, and you're going to have Talk and Shopper Mania, and you had the appearance at Slammiversary, and you had the appearance last night. They're going to have their debut match on Impact next week against Reno Scum. It's just very well done. It's very well thought out. I'm not saying that Gallows and Anderson would have appeared on Dynamite and they would have been on Dark next week, because I don't think they would have. But could you say the same for maybe a Heath Slater? Probably not. Could you say the same for EC3? I don't think so. I do truly think that if EC3 went to AEW, I think he'll be on Dark. I think he'll be on Dark all the time. I really do. And I think Impact Wrestling is absolutely the best place for him, and I think that goes the same for Mike Bennett, certainly. Zack Ryder, maybe it's a different proposition. Maybe it's a different proposition because he is friends with Cody, because he does have quite a large following. But I don't know. I look at that roster and I just think I don't think he's guaranteed to be appearing on Dynamite every single week. I just don't think he is. Whereas I think if he's in Impact Wrestling, he absolutely is. Because if Zack Ryder is signed to Impact Wrestling and he's not on the show, people will rightfully so question, where the hell is Zack Ryder? Like, he's a massive asset to your roster, and he's a new star on your roster. Why not use him? So we'll have to wait and see when it comes to Ryder and Mike Bennett. Something also I do want to address, and I think this is quite an interesting discussion to talk about, is people have mentioned recently, well, what's the deal with all of these ex-WWE guys going to Impact Wrestling and signing with Impact Wrestling, and yet when they go to an AEW, people just say, they're just signing ex-WWE guys, blah, blah, blah. It feels like, you've warmed up someone else's dinner, blah, blah, blah. And I'd look at that and I'd go, well, you're obviously not taking any of the context into question here, are you? Because this isn't like when Impact Wrestling was signing the ex-WWE guys in the mid-2000s or anything like that. They were guys, and again, no disservice to them, but it was Kevin Nash. Kurt Angle doesn't necessarily fit, but partially, I suppose. Christian Cage, Booker T, etc. These were big guys coming in on big contracts that realistically didn't want to work that much. They wanted the limited dates, they wanted to earn money, and I don't think they necessarily really truly cared about Impact Wrestling. Maybe, like, again, Kurt Angle's slightly different there, but you know what I mean. You've heard those horror stories of them not really wanting to do anything, to sort of show up, do what they got to do, and then get out. Whereas I think it's different with this group of guys. I think Impact Wrestling, what they have done really well, and people like Scott D'Amore and Don Callis do need to be absolutely praised for this. I think they've built a roster there at the moment of guys that are very unified and really happy and really want to see the company succeed. Gone are the days we don't care, this company doesn't pay people well, this company is Bush League and all of this sort of stuff. They've managed to make this mentality that you saw back in the day when the likes of ECW, whereby it's us against the world, we're going to prove these guys wrong, and the ex-WWE guys coming in have the biggest chip on their shoulder right now. Because they absolutely do. These were guys that and girls in WWE that in April they were deemed as non-essential. That was the thing. If you were furloughed or you were fired, you were non-essential to the company. You weren't essential characters. You weren't essential employees. Basically meaning we don't need you. You know, you don't. Whilst we would like to have you under contract, then the reason we had you under contract, especially in the case of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. But the only reason we had you under contract is so you couldn't go anywhere else. Which to me, if I was a Gallows and Anderson, I would take that quite personally. I've like, okay, yes, you were going to pay me these big contracts, but you were doing it to stifle my career. You were doing it so I couldn't be creatively fulfilled. And coming out of that and being told that you're not essential and all of this sort of stuff, to me, that would make me have a massive chip on my shoulder. That would make me feel like I have something to prove, and I need to prove my worth, and I want to prove people like WWE wrong that I'm way more than essential. You know, I'm way more than non-essential, rather. I'm completely essential to a company, and I'm going to prove my worth, and I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And I think that's the case of all of these guys that are coming in. Look at EC3. His whole character right now is called Control Your Narrative, because his character and his career has been controlled by other people in suits for such a long period of time that he's sick of it. Gallows and Anderson, of course, have a massive chip on their shoulder because they feel like they were duped to re-sign with WWE when AEW were interested, and they were going to be part of the opening episode of Dynamite last year, and Triple H said to him, think of your family, is AEW even going to be around? We want to set you for life. We want to set you for life, and yet less than a year later, you're fired. You know, I know things happen, but again, that would light a fire under me without a shadow of a doubt. And it's the same with Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder, you know, you look at Zack Ryder, and he's a guy that he was there for well over 10 years, and probably longer than like 15 years or something like that. Continuously got over, got popular, got over, had great ideas, had the fans chant him on, and again and again and again, WWE would say, nope, we're not going with you, nope, this isn't what we want to do, you can't be that guy for us. And now that he has been released by WWE, you see his social media posts, he looks and feels reinvigorated, and he's got something to prove, and he wants to prove them wrong, that they, and along with everyone that thought he couldn't be a big star, he wants to prove them wrong. And I think that's the same with Brian Myers. I circle it back to Brian Myers because that's what we were talking about at the start of this video. In WWE land, Brian Myers can't beat anyone. And I know people will say, well, that's the gimmick. That was Brian Myers' gimmick, right? He was a bit of a loudmouth, and then he was just the world's worst professional wrestler, and just got pinned immediately. That was Brian Myers. That was Kurt Hawkins in WWE. And that's fine, because that gimmick, I suppose, does have a place on a professional wrestling roster. But at some point, if you say to yourself as a fan, you look at Kurt Hawkins and say, well, this guy, he can't even work, or he couldn't even carry a feud if he wanted to, that's the people that Brian Myers wants to prove wrong now. He wants to show people, look, I'm not just the guy that walks out, gets hit by one move and leaves. I'm more than that. I can work a match, I can have feuds, I can draw money, I can do things that are creatively satisfying and tell a good story on television, and I want an opportunity to prove that, and Impact Wrestling is going to be the opportunity to prove that. So, whilst he might not be joined by Zack Ryder at the moment in Impact Wrestling, I still absolutely think he can work as a singles guy. He worked as a singles guy on the independent scene whilst Zack Ryder was in WWE for ages. I remember hearing reports, and I remember it got a lot of buzz at the time when Brian Myers, for the life of me, I can't remember what company it was. It was an independent show, but he did a no ropes barbed wired massacre match. Like, the ropes were replaced with barbed wire. One, that is crazy, and you saw it in ECW with like Terry Funk and Sabu, and was it Sabu and Abyss? and Abyss and Judas Messias in TNA. But that to do it on an independent show and for maybe not the massive biggest audience and the massive payday, but he did it because he loves professional wrestling, and he wanted to try it, and he wanted to do something different and do something that would get people talking. That proves the type of person that Brian Myers is as a professional wrestler. And I think that's the kind of person that Impact Wrestling have looked at when they've been bringing in these ex-WWE superstars, these people that were released in April. These aren't guys that let their contract expire because, I'm burnt out and eventually I'll go back to WWE. I could probably say to a T that these guys that have been released by WWE in April, or like Jon Moxley when he let his contract expire, or FTR, can you really see them going back to WWE? Personally, I just can't. Not for a very long time. It doesn't, to me, seem like a Booker T situation where it's like, well, I'll go back eventually. I just can't see that. I don't think the Good Brothers will ever go back. You speak to Luke Gallows, he's very open, like, I didn't even really want to go in the first place. I'd been there. I'd seen what it's like, but AJ Styles and Kyle Anderson were like, well, let's try it. Let's go to the WWE. And look, Gallows and Anderson, no, they are well out. They are never. I don't think they'll ever come back. And you can't even say, well, for a lot of money. They were offered a lot of money before, and there are a lot of other places to make a lot of money now. They're going to make decent money in Impact, and if that doesn't work out, they'll go to AEW and they'll make good money there. And push comes to shove, they'll go back to Japan and they'll make good money there. The days of WWE being the end all be all of making money in professional wrestling and making a living in professional wrestling are done. That's why people like the Bucks and Kenny Omega and Cody have thrived and led to the rise of AEW. Because you can make a very good living outside of WWE now, and you don't need to play in that corporate structure anymore. You don't need to play with a writer's idea of what you should be doing inside or outside of the ring. So, as I mentioned, a lot going on with Impact Wrestling right now. Brian Myers, his debut last night, vignette-wise, I think most likely we'll see him in person next week. As I mentioned, he was at the tapings. He was backstage. I'm assuming then the vignettes were filmed at the tapings. He looked to be wearing the same gear in this photo that he was wearing in the vignettes. I'm assuming the vignettes were shot on Monday for Tuesday's show, and next week he'll appear on the show as well. What he gets involved in, we'll have to see. I don't think he should be involved in the tag team division unless it's with a Zack Ryder, and again, we'll have to wait and see if that's the case. Is he Impact Wrestling World Championship ready? Probably not at the moment. Eddie Edwards is going to have an open challenge. Next week he's going to be facing Trey for the Impact World Championship, so Brian Myers isn't going to be there. Could he get involved in the Impact World Championship? Again, I don't want to slight him based on his WWE run, but I would like to see him in maybe one feud first just to get the stink off of that WWE run off. Then he's completely Brian Myers. He's not even looked at as Kurt Hawkins anymore. That's what I'd like to see when it comes to that. Although what I wouldn't mind is a feud with Chris Bay. Now, we know the X Division, the days of when Hogan and Bischoff, etc., and Bruce Pritchard put weight limits back on it because it's basically a cruiserweight division, so we need to have weights on it. Oh, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. You look at that X Division and they didn't get it. The whole point with the X Division is that it had awesome matches. There were no limits. Was it high flying? Yeah. Was it always high flying? No. It was meant to be stiff. It was meant to be great matches, compelling matches with the best wrestlers in the world that maybe at the moment couldn't be considered as main event world champion material. But there were guys that had great matches. Can Chris Bay be a future world champion? Absolutely. Can he be a world champion now? Probably not. So the X Division suits him to a T, plus he's got that traditional X Division style. But you look at someone like Willie Mack. Does he have the X Division, size that you would think? Does he look like AJ Styles or anything like that? No. But he reminds me of a Samoa Joe in that he's a big guy, but he can fly around and he can do all sorts of stuff. So I really liked him as the X Division champion. I thought he was a nice throwback to what the X Division really is. So with that in mind, I think a Brian Myers and a Chris Bay feud, I think that could be fun. I think that could work. Is Brian Myers the most traditional X Division wrestler? No. But I think it'll be an excellent opportunity for Brian Myers to prove that, one, he can work, because I think some people have forgotten, quite frankly. When was the last time you saw Brian Myers had a match that went 15, 20 minutes? I can't remember that. at all. Even when he had successes in WWE, such as winning the Raw Tag Team Championships at WrestleMania 35, that match didn't go 15-20. But if he's wrestling for the X Division Championship on a main event of Impact Wrestling, or if he's wrestling for the X Division Championship, say at a Bound for Glory or something like that, that match is going long. So then that's an opportunity to prove I'm Brian Myers and I can work. People don't think I can work. People think I'm just the job guy on TV with walks around with a cane and all this sort of stuff, which they took away from him in the end. The only thing that made him have a little bit of personality they took away. I'd like to see him go for the X Division title. I think that could work. I think that could work, and I think that could be a lot of fun. And then maybe you do move him on to something else after that. But that really reintroduces Brian Myers as not Kurt Hawkins, not the guy that lost all the time in WWE, but someone else completely, the guy that can work in Impact Wrestling. That's who Brian Myers is. So, really interesting time, as I mentioned, for Impact Wrestling. It's just, there is so much buzz going on, and there's so much positivity surrounding the company, and so much excitement. I'm really excited to watch Impact Wrestling every Tuesday. Has that always been the case? For the last couple of years, it has. I don't think everyone else has joined in with that because they haven't been aware. I think some people gave up on Impact Wrestling a long time ago because of the stories they heard, because maybe some of the people in charge and all of that sort of stuff. I think that's probably why. But now, I think with the Slammiversary event at the weekend and the new guys coming in and the buzz that's going on, people are willing to give Impact Wrestling another chance. And everyone that has so far has been pleasantly surprised, I think. They've been very positive about what they're seeing. And to hardcore Impact Wrestling fans, again, it's no surprise because the product's been great for a while. But a lot of people now are starting to watch again, and a lot of people are starting to talk about it again, which is great to see, because the more companies that succeed and the more companies that thrive mean more places where the wrestlers can go and work and draw money and make good money. It's not just a monopoly that you have to go to WWE to succeed, which is really, really important. So just really exciting time to be an Impact Wrestling fan right now, isn't it? But as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts about Brian Myers in Impact Wrestling? Do you think that he will eventually go for a world title, an X Division title, or a tag title? Do you think we'll see Zack Ryder sometime soon in Impact Wrestling, or will he go to AEW? Do you think we'll see Mike Bennett sometime in AEW, or will he go to Impact Wrestling instead? It's a very complex time, so let me know your thoughts in the description box below, or the comment box below, rather. I'll be sure to interact with all of your comments down there. I really enjoy responding to all of you guys, and everyone that comments on the video is greatly appreciated. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to give us a like. Likes really do help us out in terms of getting into people's recommendations, so I really do appreciate everyone that takes the time to like the video as well. Also, if you have enjoyed the video, be sure to share it with your friends, and most importantly, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. We're over 500 subscribers now. The next goal is 600 on that long road to 1,000 subscribers. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we've got so many plans for once we do get to 1,000 subscribers, whether it's live streams, watch-alongs, streaming of games, or lots of fun wrestling stuff and wrestling content. It's just a lot easier once we get to 1,000 subscribers to do that. So the quicker we get there, the more we can do that. I really do appreciate everyone that has subscribed already. It really does mean a lot to me, and it's very, very humbling, and you are the reason that I continue to make these videos, and I hope you really enjoy them. And like I said, if you're a first-time watcher or listener or anything like that, please do subscribe. Every little does help, and it really does help us out. Also, if you want to follow us on our social media platforms, you can see them on the screen right now. The links to them are in the description box below. It's at 365 Wrestle on Twitter and at Wrestle News 365 on Facebook and Instagram, so be sure to give us a like or a follow there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you've come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.